Hello, my name is Dr. Nick Bowman. I'm an associate professor in journalism and creative media at Texas Tech University. And I'm going to speak very briefly on behalf of our research team, headed up by Rowan Daniels. He's a doctoral student at U Antwerpen in Belgium. Daniel Postler, who just recently received his PhD from Hanover, and Elisa Meckler, who's a professor at Aalto University in Finland. And our multinational, multicultural, multi-perspective taking team decided to approach the question of what is eudaimonia when studied in video games? Because what we found in a very quick early research meeting, the four of us, when we use the term, aren't always talking about the same thing. So we thought it'd make a fun project. Now, our data is online, as is a preprint of this manuscript. It's going to be published in an upcoming issue of Media and Communication, and I'll direct you to the information online for more details there. So, media entertainment is something we all pretty much understand. When we talk about this using like the Oliver and Rainey definition, it's sort of that multifaceted approach where we have hedonia, pleasure, fun, enjoyment, arousal. And then we have eudaimonia, which is that more than pleasure. And we'll talk about that latter part a little bit because we know that both of these are connected to well-being. But sometimes our definitions of eudaimonia don't always match each other's definitions. The term can be defined as human flourishing and prosperity, but sometimes it depends on how you're approaching it. And so in the psychology research, the four questions that tend to get asked are what a person seeks out in their daily experiences, what a person actually goes about and does as a way to sort of make themselves feel as if they're flourishing or maybe help others flourish. It could be how a person feels as a result of either the things they do or the experiences they seek. And it can also be sort of a broader discussion of how well a person is doing internally, if you think about that Maslowian approach to self-actualization. And these four different things can sometimes lead us to thinking about four similar but not the same things when we talk about eudaimonia. Now, all of this is going to be relevant to video games because we know that games are entertainment, and so thus we expect them to be enjoyable. And in fact, if you look at the history of games over the last 70 or plus years, they've traditionally been very well aligned with below-the-neck verbs, action verbs, running, jumping, shooting, fighting, punching. You know, the scene on screen, you're more likely to be the man in black stabbing somebody, and it's fun. But we've also seen games, like most forms of media entertainment, have evolved to include a broad range of expressions and emotional experiences. In fact, the scene on screen for many gamers is one of the saddest video game moments in modern history. It's when one of your beloved characters in the role-playing game Final Fantasy is killed. And you don't really see this part coming because, you know, game characters don't die, and when they do, you can either bring them back to life with a potion, or they were bad people, so they deserved it. And, you know, in some research with Mary Beth Oliver in 2016, we had surveyed gamers and found that the vast majority of them experience enjoyment. That's not surprising. What was surprising was nearly 3/4 of people in the study talked about things that could be construed as eudaimonia, and that's what got a lot of this research line going. Now, as I said, that 75%, we're not always sure what they're talking about, though. You know, we can call it meaningfulness. Maybe they, you know, did something in a game and it was it was idiosyncratic to them. It could be personal growth as a result of a gaming experience. It could be something even more specific in terms of self-transcendence or appreciating what was done, or we're not sure exactly. And, you know, I wouldn't go so far as to say that there are these eudaimonia wars between different groups defining the construct, but it did seem, just like with our team's early meetings, we weren't always talking about the exact same construct when we were talking about eudaimonia. I say it both ways. I'm not sure which one is right sometimes. So one of the ways we decided to approach this as a group was a scoping review. Now, a scoping review is a special form of synthesis where you're not looking for effect sizes and data points, but instead what you're looking for is you know, commonalities and patterns in explications and constructs. It's sort of charting an area of research for future development. And it doesn't have to be constructs. That's what we chose to do. We used that Oliver et al. 2016 paper as our anchor, and we looked at papers that had come since then that were citing it. And one of the things we were doing in this process was trying to filter through the literature to find those studies that had some association with this anchor study that were probably studying video games and eudaimonia. We ended up with 82. The paper goes into great detail as to this Prisma search. We coded these as authors, as authorship teams, and we generally agreed that the papers included in that final 82 were about video games and they were about eudaimonia. And we'll talk about the patterns that we found. I'll present 3 here. The first one was that appreciation was oftentimes the thing people were talking about as this emotional entertainment outcome of gameplay. And that could be biased by the fact that the Oliver et al. Paper talked about appreciation as entertainment outcome. This was the idea that I did something and now that it's over, I felt moved by it. Now, if you read the paper, you'll find that what people said was appreciation wasn't always very precise, but the general idea is it was an outcome of the experience. So if enjoyment is the pleasurable outcome, appreciation was the more serious emotional outcome. That was a pretty dominant finding in the literature. The other one is that we found these 3 discrete in-game actions or in-game responses that seem to co-vary. People would sometimes attach personal meaning to the things they were doing. Even if those things didn't really have a personal meaning per se, the player would give it there. We would feel moved by a specific experience, an act of kindness or moral deliberation. Or sometimes something would happen in a video game and it would cause us to reflect immediately on what was just happening and how I would deal with that right now. And then the last one we found is that video games had this very strong connection to social eudaimonia, people talking about being connected to other people around them, both human and non-human players. And this is a very important part of that, feeling of something bigger, being part of the whole. For more information, I want to direct you to the paper because we do provide many of the answers. You can contact us using the information on screen. I sincerely appreciate, and I hope you found meaning in this presentation. Thank you.